Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of The Independent Activist with me, Fra Hughes, in Belfast. I'm delighted and honoured to be joined by Youel Al Helou, who is a Palestinian journalist and documentary filmmaker. He's originally from the occupied territories of Gaza, and we met in 2010 when I was on the Viva Palestina convoy organised by George Galloway. Uh, Yusuf, it's a pleasure to have you here. We met when I got to Gaza in 2010. I was only there for 3 days. You spent the whole of your formative life growing up under the occupation. Could you tell us? I remember Operation Cast Lead. That's what got me involved. That was 2008, 2009. Can you tell me what it was like living under siege, bombardment, constant threat of war, and indeed war? So, your childhood and maybe up to the time when you were able to leave Gaza and come to the United Kingdom.
Yes, thank you for hosting me. Of course, you're a good friend of mine. I remember the moments when we met first and then we stayed in touch together, and here we are for over maybe 15, 20 years, almost. So growing up in Gaza, which is a concentration camp, I grew up in the 80s. I experienced the first uprising, the first intifada. So I didn't enjoy my childhood in the 80s. It was my first experience to violence, seeing Israeli occupation forces shooting and killing and barricading, blocking some roads, calling for curfews. So I remember when they were calling or via loudspeakers on people to stay indoors. Uh, People were not allowed to leave after sunset until dawn. That was my first experience when I was a child. Of course, there was no proper amusement parks or recreational sites. Gaza is it's this disadvantaged place, has been under occupation for a long time, and Gaza housed almost 70 refugee camps. So at a very young age, I saw the tents and the asbestos houses and very, basic homes along the Gaza beach, the refugee camp, shelter refugee camp. I received my education in at United Nations schools, and I was lucky. I was fond of the English language. That's why I practiced my English at a very young age, and I wanted to travel the world and receive advanced attention, advanced education. I mean, abroad, because we have been living in this big prison not only since 2006, but since the 50s, as the Sun's General Miko Peled. He said the concentration camp of Gaza was established in the 50s, 2 years or 1 year after the Nakba. The population of Gaza, they were pushed towards the population of Palestine. They were pushed towards Gaza, and in the hope that Egypt would annex Gaza and control it, but they relinquished their control when Israel launched its 1967 war. So it has been always ups and downs, violence, and but I tried my best, to be a normal person. I received my education. I had a dream to go abroad and receive, my education abroad. And I've been here for some time, for almost 10 years. And I was lucky in the summer of 2023, I visited Gaza and I reconnected with the place of my childhood, the alleyways of refugee camps, Shijaiya, Tufah neighborhood, the beach, Gaza's only park. Gaza is very small, Fry is only 25 miles long, 5 miles wide. You can drive Gaza from north to south in half an hour and from east to west in less than 15 minutes. And in this small piece of land, you have 2.5 million people. It's very, very densely populated. And more than half of the population are young people, children. If Gazans are allowed to rule themselves, we have young generation, we have potential, we have skills, talents, innovation ideas, but people are forced to rely on a humanitarian assistance provided by UNRWA, the United Nations agency. And people are deprived their basic rights and needs, deprived from traveling not only to the West Bank, but also to the outside world. We used to have an airport in the year 2000. and Israel destroyed the airport in less than 2 years because they considered the airport as a form of sovereignty, and they wanted to punish Arafat at the time, and they wanted to drive people out. And when the second Intifada broke out in the year 2000, of course, I experienced that too. When Ariel Sharon, the prime minister at the time, he made a provocative visit to Al-Aqsa compound. And since that time, since my childhood up to now, I'm almost in my 40s, I've been covering Palestine, Gaza. We've been struggling for self-determination. We've been trying to raise awareness. We've been trying to convince the world that we are human beings. We are not aliens. We are not asking for too much. I mean, the Israelis, they are good at playing the victim, but we are the real victim. But we don't shed tears like them. We continue our path. We are dignified people. We teach life. They are starving our people now in Gaza. They have transformed Gaza into a testing ground, a scapegoat. And Palestinians, they refuse to vanish. We refuse to vanish. We refuse to go to their museum. We are the indigenous people of the land. And what Israel does, this is not going to force Palestinians to relinquish their inalienable rights of self-determination.
100%, Yusuf. Just interested in a few things you said. Now, you mentioned Miko Peled. He wrote that book, The General's Son, because his father was the general in charge of Gaza during some part of the occupation. I met him in the West Bank in Nabi Sali. I was at one of the Friday protests, and I'd heard that this guy, Miko Peled, was going to be in Bet Sahur. He was launching a book, and I was talking to some English international solidarity movement campaigners. And I said, this guy's on in Bet Sahur, just outside Bethlehem, that evening. And a voice behind me says, I'm Miko Peled. So I met Miko Peled at the Nabi Sali Friday protest. Saying that I'd met him in Nabi Sali, the Friday protest, many, many years ago. I think it was 2014. He was launching his book, The General's Son, because his father was in charge for the Israeli occupation of Gaza at that time. And his father strongly believed that the Palestinians should have their own state, the Zionists should have their state. Basically, his impression seemed to be, let the past be the past, give some form of social justice to the Palestinians, and we'll all live together, which is something that Miko's continued on. You mentioned about your childhood in Gaza. I mean, any child born after 2006 would now be like 19 years of age. They've lived or died through 6 wars, and they're suffering and living under a genocide right now. So it's probably safe to say that no child in Gaza has had a childhood, no safety, no childhood that we would accept in the West as being kind of our aspirations. So do you want to tell us what life was like then post Gaza when you moved to London? I don't know if you studied there. I know you work for Press TV. Do you want to tell us what life's been like since you left Gaza, and then we can go back to how things are now?
Things continued to worsen since 2005, since 2006 when Hamas won the election, and the siege was imposed by Israel, by the Quartet, which comprised of the European Union, Russia, Israel, and the US. And Israel tightened the siege by denying Gazans their basic goods. Many items were not allowed to enter. And then the Rafah crossing, of course, the Egyptian side, they were kind of complicit in this. Obviously, they signed peace treaty with Israel, so they have to abide by instructions from the Israelis. So leaving Gaza was not easy anyway. When I received that award, I struggled to leave because the crossing was closed for some time, for weeks, for months. But at some point, I managed to leave. So things were not good at the time, and I wanted, my children to have a sense of stability for some time, a break from this madness, from this violence, and from this, Israeli terrorism, because Palestinians are defenseless population. We don't have tanks or planes or super army. It's the Israelis the colonized. They are uh, the colonialist power. They have been imposing their aggression, imposing their occupation policies. They have been testing weapons on us. So people at some point, whenever if anybody has got a chance to leave temporary, they can leave to pursue their education or to receive advanced medical attention abroad or to look for a better future. But anyway, Gaza is still 2.5 million people, and this is a proof and evidence that whatever Israel does, Palestinians are adamant to stay on the land. Um, Now, when I left, I had the intention to go back because
Mhm.
obviously we are not willing to abandon our homeland. So when I spent my time here, of course, I gained experience, and the kids they establish a new life, and I gained more experiences. And when it was the right time to go visit Gaza in 2023, I made a decision to go and reconnect with my city and to because I missed Gaza. I was homesick for almost 10 years. And the reason why I didn't go back in the last 10 years, it's because each 4 years, Israel was launching a war. And I didn't want the children to stuck there and to lose their academic school here. And also, on top of that, the military situation, the security situation in Sinai was not stable, was unstable, because if there is unrest in Sinai between the Egyptian authorities and other militias or armed forces, this means the Rafah crossing is closed. We wish if we have our own airport so that we fly directly from London or Dublin, for example, to go to Gaza. But we have to travel through Cairo. We have to land at Cairo airport and take a very, very tiring, exhausting trip to go to Gaza. It should take up to 4 or 5 hours maximum. But nowadays it takes a day, 2 days, 3 days, because the Egyptian authorities do not allow us to use the highway that links
Mhm.
Ismailia to Al Arish. We have to use the ferry, the old ferry system. It's a very rusty, slow ferry. The taxis, they board the ferry, and the ferry is very slow, you know, reaching the other bank. And it's very bureaucratic procedures, very slow. You know, you have to pay bribes most of the time. But despite these hazards that I anticipated, I wanted to go back, and I made the decision. And then I had the intention to film Gaza to show the world the beauty of Gaza, because Gaza has been off limits to non-Palestinians, because only Palestinian Gazans were allowed to go back to Gaza. Even Palestinian West Bankers, they are not allowed to come to Gaza. We meet each other outside the occupied territories. The only time in my life that I saw the other part of Palestine was in the 80s, in the early 80s. Um, because there was no checkpoint between Gaza and the rest of the occupied territories. People were driving their cars between Gaza and the occupied West Bank. But since the signing of Oslo Accords in the 90s, since then, Israel erected areas of crossing and people were banned for life to go to the West Bank. So I was 7 years old when I visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, Al-Quds, and parts of occupied Palestine. I barely remember these moments. Was too small. So yeah, I made my visit and I spent 2 months in Gaza. I didn't know that the time I spent there was going to be my last time to see beautiful Gaza before it's being vanished.
Yeah, it sounds like the Egyptians are trying to deter anyone, well, prior to this latest genocide, from returning to Gaza before 2023 by making it as awkward and as difficult as possible for people to return. You were talking about how you used to be able to go from Gaza to the West Bank. I've been in the West Bank, and I know that Palestinians who live in the West Bank can't even go to the coast, they can't even go to Jericho. Some of them can't even leave the towns that they're living in under occupation because of the Israeli security apparatus, because they close the roads, because they have the metal barriers that I've seen at the roundabouts in Ramallah. So a very brave decision to actually go back in
Mhm.
2023. So you were there in, was it August? And then the genocide
July,
began.
July,
July?
August.
Okay, yep. Uh, So you were there prior to the Israeli genocidal
Genocide.
bombardment, which started on the 8th of October. Now, I want to ask you two parallel things. You've been able to bring up your children in the United Kingdom. I'm sure, is there a comparison to the lives that they've been able to lead here
Um,
and the lives?
so they now have a stable life here. They
Mhm,
established themselves, they have friends. Back home, classrooms were very crowded. Of course, studying is in Arabic here, studying in English. But life there is more vibrant. There is sociable life more.
mhm,
They have many cousins. I mean, they kind of play in the street. Here, things are different. So they miss those times. They miss their cousins. Uh, because we have to start from scratch here to make new friends and
mhm,
so on. But when we visit Gaza in the summer of 2023, they remembered all the good time we spent, you know, good time on the beach, visiting our relatives, visiting nice places, restaurants, cafes. It was hot, by the way. It was almost 35 degrees. So they only had the chance to go outside the house in the evening. But myself, I used to leave the house in the early morning and come late at night because I wanted to film every part of Gaza. I had the intention to make a documentary film about the historical places, the recreational sites. I wanted to show the world how Gaza looks like because I managed to film a number of videos of traveling vlogs
mhm,
in Europe, in the Gulf, other places. And people were asking me, "You've shown us nice places in the world, but we need to see your country, Gaza or Palestine or Jerusalem." For me, Jerusalem, the West Bank, it's not easy. It's not allowed, I think, for us, even though I carry a British passport. It's going to be difficult
mhm,
because they have an issue with people who were born in Gaza. So I'm sure they will give me a hard time, me or other people who are from Gaza. But so I thought, okay, I'm gonna go spend time in Gaza, and I enjoyed every second. And I wish it was longer than 2 months because if I knew a war was going to break out, I wouldn't even have time to sleep. I wanted to visit the remaining cities that I didn't have a chance to visit. So because I lived in the northern part of Gaza, Gaza City is considered in the north.
mhm.
The north consisted of Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, Jabalia, Tufah, Daraj, Shati, and Rimal neighborhood, Sheikh Ajlin, Gaza City. I also visited the middle area. The middle area consists of Al Mughraqa, Nusayrat, Dir al Balah. I reached those places, but I didn't really spend good time in Khan Yunis and Rafah, which are two big governorates. But I think I'm glad that I made it. I'm glad that I met my family. And sadly, I lost my sister, Asma, the eldest sister, and all of her seven children. They were killed, murdered in cold blood in December 2023 when an Israeli F-16 bombed the house. And until this moment, their bodies remained buried under the rubble. We are unable to retrieve their bodies because there is no heavy machinery. Israel bombed most of the bulldozers, most of the heavy machineries used. They bombed most of the municipality buildings and many vehicles destroyed. So thousands of people are still under the rubble. So when I look at this documentary film, I remember the beautiful time I spent there. I shed tears sometimes. I mean, it's my love letter to my home city. This film is a very unique film. It's very dear to my heart.
It's a perfect description. I must offer you my condolences again on the loss of your sister and your extended family. I couldn't really. We went through a conflict here for 30 years, but I mean, it pales in comparison to what's happening to the indigenous people in Palestine, your family, your friends, your loved ones. I couldn't even imagine for a second, not only what you're going through, Yusuf, but also your children, for them to reconnect after X amount, after a decade, and to meet extended family and the cousins. I'm sure that's had a huge, deep psychological, left a deep psychological scar on your children uh, going forward. Now, you mentioned the film documentary. I was lucky enough to see that in Belfast. You launched it in Ireland. I'd say there were about 150 people in the room in Belfast. I know you had it in Derry and you had it in Dublin. I think you had it in Cork or Galway or
Cork,
Letterkenny.
Limerick, Galway,
Cork.
yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. The more people you see this, the better. I must say, when I watched it, you know, when you see the vibrancy of life in Gaza, the closeness and the interconnections of family and community, something that is very much died, I believe, in the West because we're driven towards materialism, we're driven towards consumerism, we're driven away from spiritualism, the idea of community, the idea of people like looking out for each other and helping each other, and to see that type of society and life was absolutely beautiful. And then in the end, you obviously kind of bring us up to date with what's happened since you have returned and since October the 8th. And when you look at the two of them side by side, it's almost a time capsule of we're
Mm,
only going back 18 months, but looking at that, you could be going back, you could go on
yeah.
back 200 years, back to the Stone Age. They said they turned Gaza
Mhm.
into a car park. It's exactly what they're trying to do. The bombing of the hospitals, and they're now using starvation. There's 60 days that nothing has got in. Now, I'm not sure what to say because I can only imagine the depth of pain that you must be suffering, and then people talking to you, people interviewing you, showing the film. It's bound to stir up all the emotions and bring back some of the more uh, tragic memories of like your sister and your nephews and nieces. So
Yeah.
the
Um,
people, the people don't want to leave. What do you think's going to happen, Yusuf? I'm sorry to ask.
so some people until this moment they are in shock. They
Mm,
wish if this is a nightmare and they wake up and they just see Gaza as it was before.
mm,
Because I myself I cannot believe that Gaza is destroyed. I mean I think I'm dreaming because the level of destruction Israel wanted to level Gaza to the ground because this was their intention um, since October. They wanted to punish the population.
mm,
So they can create all kinds of justifications. They have an issue with a political party there, but they are punishing everybody, claiming different things that all Palestinians celebrated what happened. No one is innocent. They
mm,
elected that political party. So it seems that they don't consider Palestinians humans. They consider us as type of humans. And uh, I think it's to do with their, religious or beliefs that Palestinians are cockroaches, Palestinians are snakes, they don't deserve to live and their children they will become terrorists one day, so no one is innocent whether they are children, women, elderly. Cut the trees, destroy, unbelievable how this extent level of impunity. I mean, they have no feelings towards children, for example. If you look at that lady, the head of the Situla movement, yeah, I mean, they don't consider Palestinians as human beings. They said this is the land of Judea and Samaria, and Palestinians are invaders, and they existed there 3,000 years ago. I mean, how about if we Palestinians were Jewish, for example, 3,000 years ago, and then we converted to Christianity, and then we converted to Islam? So the notion that we are not the indigenous people, and they are the indigenous people because we are Muslims, they are Jewish. I mean, things are mixed up, things are upside down. I mean, you cannot be a democracy, claim to be a democracy, when you are violating every norm, every convention, every international law, starving people to death, collectively punishing everybody, violating and challenging Security Council resolutions. They have no respect for any international body, any international organization. So what's going to happen next? I think they are clinging to the idea of Trump of ethnically cleansing Gaza from its residents, the indigenous people. Although Trump stopped talking about that, but Smotrich and the other crazy guy, Ben Gvir and Netanyahu himself, yeah, they work tirelessly night and day in order to facilitate the exile and deportation of Palestinians. They are squeezing people to the corner in order to facilitate their exit via maybe allowing some ships to dock at Gaza port, and then everybody wants to climb that ship. This will bring memories in the 40s when the Jewish were forced to flee Europe, to flee persecution in Europe, and we opened our arms to them, we welcomed them, and then here we are. We are being kicked out and killed and destroyed and dispossessed. And history repeats itself as if history repeats itself. Now they want to get rid of us. I think some people might leave if there is means of stability, but people wouldn't leave to the desert in Sinai. No way. People might accept to leave, especially the young people, but small percentage. Maybe they want to go to Europe, America. Why doesn't Trump take 2 million Palestinians in America? Why doesn't Europe take 2 million Palestinians? I mean, and they blame the Arab countries. Why Arabs didn't absorb 2 million? Why any country should take Palestinians? I mean, it's a personal choice. If you come up with a proper scheme, a governmental scheme to give people residency, passports, income, then they might leave. But now you are telling Palestinians to go to the desert. It's not going to happen. They are dreaming. So I know they are destroying Gaza. They make life unbearable, unlivable. They don't allow caravans or tents to come to Gaza. People are, sleeping on the streets, on the destruction, on the debris and destruction, destroyed houses. They cannot find the meals. They are struggling. They cannot find the medication. They live next to piles of garbage and rubbish and sewage. Um, so what's going to happen next? I don't know. I think the international community has to intervene to put an end to this genocide first and to impose sanctions on Israel because what's happening is abnormal. Israel has set a dangerous precedent. The international law has been sabotaged. The whole world is in shock. I mean, the nations, but the governments, they are complicit. They can take action, but they don't want to take action. I think they are afraid from America. We know the influence of the Zionist lobby in the West. So I don't know. People are waiting for a miracle now. Maybe God has a plan. So let's wait and see. Maybe the conscience of the Israeli society, they will rise up against Netanyahu and topple him. Maybe destabilization will happen somewhere in the world to change the international system, because the oppression and injustice done to Palestinians, this will not be forgotten. Palestinians will never forgive and will not forget.
Yes, I think what we're witnessing is subjugation through starvation. Is what they're trying to do: subdue the people in Gaza by starving them of the necessities for life, be it housing, food, water, electricity, clothing, anesthesia. We've heard all the horrible stories of children having their body parts amputated without anesthesia because those medicines are being refused entry. You touched on a few things there. If Trump wants to rebuild Gaza, just rebuild it with the Gazans in place. But obviously, that's not what he's looking to do. When we talk about, you touched on supremacy. I mean, I look at the German Nazis as fascists, and they had this brainwashing of young people. They had the fascist mentality of the Übermensch and the people who were subhuman and the people who were allowed, the communist, socialist, gay people, gypsies, people who would be like autistic, and the Jews, obviously. All these people put in one kind of mesh and kind of scheduled for destruction. But I see no, like, fascism is fascism. So I don't compare Netanyahu to Hitler, but I compare what I would call Jewish supremacism, Zionist ideology, as a form of fascism. So I see that as Zionist fascism, and I see what happened in the Second World War as German fascism, because it wasn't, they murdered 27 million Russians in order to try and defeat and conquer the Soviet Union. So we have this form of, I think it's brainwashing. You see these kids in these schools in the Zionist state, they seem to be brought up to believe that everything is theirs. No one else has the right to live there. They are the indigenous population, when in fact they are a white European colonial settler aberration within the Ummah. I think they're totally alien. The Ashkenazis are European Jews. They don't really have any links to historic Palestine, to the Levant, or with the Ummah. And it's exactly what they did in North America and Canada, South America, Australia, New Zealand. So, like, how do you? I see that people are confronting this in the West Bank. Maybe give us an idea of exactly what's happening in the West Bank now, because it looks like a mini Gaza. They're shooting people, they're arresting people. I've seen groups of men. If this was colonial France in Algeria, where they lined up 30 men and they had them all walk following the person in front, or tying hands together, blindfolded, beaten, stripped of their underwear in many cases. Uh, could you tell us what's happening in the West Bank, and like what God forbids the future there?
So situation in the West Bank is not much different. Of course, they experience brutality of the settlers, also the confiscation of their lands, the revocation of their identity cards. They experience racism. Some roads only specified allocated for Israelis, Jews, and Palestinians have to sneak different ways in order to reach their places, because the apartheid wall sliced many areas and it's a long way for them to go to certain cities. So they have to climb the walls. Though they also they live in a big prison, but the prison of Gaza is more intense.
Mm-hmm.
You have 2.5 million people in the West Bank. Probably they have 3 million in a much larger area. It's mountainous area, whereas Gaza is very flat. Also, there is a systematic policy to ethnically cleanse Palestinians by burning towns, by arresting people at pre-dawn operations, by making life hell and miserable, by unleashing the settlers to attack the local people, annexing more lands, confiscating properties and resources of Palestinians, building more settlements. I saw this recent documentary film by this British filmmaker who made this film for the BBC. After watching that film, you feel very outraged, distressed, and annoyed. How on earth that these violations are allowed to happen? That the level of brutality, of savagery, of cruelty is unbelievable. That certain people, they think they are better than other people because they claim that God promised them that land, and they think that they are better than other people. It's just so sickening, man. Just unbelievable. And can you imagine how they live and cope under those harsh circumstances? Palestine was inhabited before 1948, because the Israelis, they say that it was a promised land to them. It was a land for people without a land. But Gaza, Palestine was a flourishing, was a thriving, hustling and bustling. Palestinians have an airport in Lod, a train track. I mean, it was kind of really modern until the Israelis came in 1948 and they occupied Palestine, historic Palestine, destroyed 500 villages and towns and cities, and they replaced the names from Arabic to Hebrew, and they had to destroy many historical sites, places, and yeah, so much is going on. So there's so much injustice, so much oppression, negligence to Palestinians' rights, and the world knows these facts, but they are not willing to address them. They just look at the reaction of Palestinians. When Palestinians say we are resisting those oppressive regimes and oppressive policies and colonization, then the world, the Western media pick on the reaction of Palestinians. But they are not willing to invest and dig deep and talk about the root cause of the problem, which is the colonization, the occupation, the injustice. This is the real issue that must be tackled.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, I've been in the
And
West Bank. I remember visiting the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron, and I remember I had to go through. I mean, I was being searched by Israeli offensive forces going into the mosque, And then I was told of the story of, I think it was the guy Goldstein, who was like a reserve medical officer in the Israeli forces, who went in I think 1994. He was an American living in Hebron. He went in 1994 and murdered scores of people in the mosque. And then, I mean, he kept shooting until he ran out of bullets. And then when people had the chance to disarm him, he died during the process of trying to subdue him. And then instead of that being a shrine to the people who were martyred, who died for their faith, what the Israelis did was go in and take over half or three quarters of the mosque, because they claim it's, I believe, Sir's tomb, and then they made a synagogue there. So somewhere that should be testament to inhumanity was then, carved up, and the very people with a similar mentality to the man who pulled the triggers ended up stealing half of the mosque. So we're kind of running out of time. So I just want to mention two things. There's an elephant in the room that nobody talks about, and that's the Palestinians in historic 48. So look what they're doing in Gaza, sad and horrible as it is. Look what they're doing in the West Bank, sad and horrible as it is. I wonder what their plan is for the people in historic Palestine. And Yusuf, where can people see the film? And if other people want to show it internationally at film festivals or wherever they could do a screening, is it Phoenix Films, or could you give us an update of how people can contact you?
Yeah, so the Phoenix of Gaza documentary film won already 4 awards. I participated in
Congratulations.
many film festivals, and anybody who's interested to sponsor a screening, they can get in touch with me. So we have upcoming screenings again in Ireland, in Dublin, Cork, and a few other towns and cities. All updates are on my Instagram account, the backup account, because my main account was suspended by Meta. I had over 1 million followers. Also, I have dedicated an Instagram account for the film called The Phoenix of Gaza. It's 48 minutes in English, my narration, and it makes you laugh, smile, and then cry, and then smile again. And Gaza will rise again from the ashes because Gaza refused to vanish. Gaza means the defeater of invaders. So we believe that the occupation will have to come at an end. I mean, you guys, you fought the British colonization for almost 700, 800 years. And
800.
I think Palestinians are willing to spend 1,000 years to get rid of the colonization. And this is the whole point about the film, that, Gaza, Palestine, I mean, it's a holy land. It should be open to all people from all nations. And we know that whenever anybody who wants to come and visit Palestinian territories, they are given hard time at the airport at Ben Gurion. And this is the thing. And even the Christian in Gaza, they are banned to go to Bethlehem. And I mentioned in the film how we had 3 churches, and those churches were targeted and destroyed by Israeli occupation forces, partially or fully. And almost 1,500 Christians, even before the war, they were denied entry to go to the West Bank, and many Christians killed in Gaza.
I just really want to mention just two things, really. I mean, one of them is we should always remember before Zionism that Jewish people in Palestine and across the whole Levant and across the Ummah and Christians and Muslims all lived in harmony. We've all seen the stuff from before 1910, before the Jewish National Fund started buying up property and land in Palestine for this Zionist state. That people lived in safety and security and visited one another and were friends, just like people in the United Kingdom and all over the world of different religions. See people as individuals, see people as humans, find common ground, have friends that are of a different color, a different race, a different religion. That's what humanity is about. It's that melting pot. Uh, so you have the film. I'm going to encourage people to watch the film. It's not because I've invited you onto the podcast. It's because I watched it. Now, the guy you mentioned earlier is Louis Theroux, and he was on the
Mhm.
BBC when that documentary, I think it's called The Settlers.
Yeah.
But I've watched what you've done, and to be honest, it's because it's almost like the last time that something's been done to show life in Gaza. It's almost, I'm very sorry to say this, it's almost like someone who had recorded the Indians before either they were completely kind of pushed out into the reservations
Yeah.
and put off their land, and the
Yeah, I forgot.
civilization destroyed, you know.
Yeah, well, I forgot to mention that I didn't want to give myself, the credit, but yeah, I mean,
No,
honestly, I was the last person to film the
exactly.
beauty of Gaza extensively before it's destroyed. So the footage that I filmed is now an archive. So I was the last person to film Gaza extensively around the clock before its absolute destruction. So I carry a heavy burden on my shoulder to show the world the resilience, the sumud, the steadfastness, the resolve of Palestinians, that we managed to decorate our prison. We managed to beautify the prison of Gaza, because the Israelis, they often claim that Gaza is not a prison. When they see these beautiful places, they say, "How dare you, Gazans? You call yourself living in a prison?" I say to them, "It is a prison, but we decorated the prison. We defied all the odds. We defied the restrictions. We defied your collective punishment. We defied your siege and blockade, and we adapted. We are very easy to adapt to all harsh circumstances because we want to live. We love life. We don't encourage for violence. We want our children to have a decent life. We want our dreams to be fulfilled and to materialize. So at the end of the day, you know, uh, people under occupation, under colonization, they will use whatever means available in order to make their voices heard. And of course, we are proud of the solidarity from the Irish people. I visited Belfast, Derry, and I've seen the murals on the wall. And Fra, took me to a number of tours. We visited those places, and I've learned a lot about the struggle of the Irish people. So we have many similarities. We are experiencing Israeli colonization and American imperialism. And it seems that Palestine is the only colony that is
Mm.
unliberated. So that's why, the world will not be safe. The freedom of the world is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. Uh, this must not normalize. The genocide must end. The occupation must end. Um, because people will not accept to live under occupation forever. This is the whole point. And it seems that Israelis, they do not get it. They're just big-headed. They just want to exterminate Palestinians. They just want Palestinians to accept the de facto situation on the ground. I mean, people, they cannot live under foreign rule. People have the ability to rule themselves.
I think you were maybe paraphrasing Nelson Mandela. He said something along the lines of, "We our liberation is not intact until the liberation of Palestine. We are not free until the Palestinians are free." Just want to emphasize again the movie, just for the simple reason that I've been following this genocide for the last 19 months. I am bombarded. I mean, the people are being bombarded and they're being murdered, but I see all the images of the destruction. I see before and after photographs of what Palestine was like and how it is now. But I genuinely have never seen anything that shows you what life was like, what it's
Mhm,
like now, the
mhm.
total contrast between the two, because people are watching a genocide and they
Mm,
have no idea how people lived
exactly.
before that genocide was
Mm,
visited upon them. So, in conclusion, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like you again to let people know where and how they can contact you. Is it through the Phoenix Film documentary? Is there an email, or can they watch it online, or how would you like to signpost people to the documentary?